Hello and welcome to the first of our bite-sized knowledge-based videos. Today we're going to be looking at an overview of the access network. It's OpenReach's job to maintain the network from point A over here in the telephone exchange. This is the main distribution frame through the access network, which is comprised of the network cabinet, underground joint box, distribution point here in the form of a telegraph pole, and the network terminating point in the end user's premises. Anything either side of these points either falls into the end user's curtilage or that of the CP. So, the first part of our network is the telephone exchange. The area which we work on is the main distribution frame. Place my safety glasses on. So, what work is actually carried out here? Well, we have the dial tone which is generated on one side of the exchange, and this is wired across using the yellow and green jumper wire across to blocks such as these, where we get the wire, place it through the hole in the side, and then terminate it here on the front with the termination tool. What this does is it connects it to the outside line. We've had many questions regarding this part of the network around tie pairs and tie pair shifts. So what this is made up of is, as an engineer, we would travel to the telephone exchange, prove a fault to the tie pairs, and we would then contact wholesale, who liaise with us on behalf of yourselves, to get a new tie pair. If this is possible to be done, they would allocate us a new port and we simply connect the line back up to there. If there's no tie pairs available, it'd be a case of wholesale dictating to us what is and what isn't available for that particular exchange. It's not a case of the engineer turning up on site and making that decision himself. So, moving out into the next part of the network, we come to the network cabinet, the first point at which we become visual to our end users. So it's really important that not only do I look after myself, but look after those around us as well. So place on the safety helmet and a high visibility vest. So in this part of the network, we connect the E side, the exchange side line, to the D side, which is the distribution side. And we can connect these in a number of ways. In the older strips, these bundles of cables like this, we connect them with a little connector called a crimp, and this is essentially filled with silicone, which when we place the lines in, we press them together, the silicone expands and creates a watertight joint. Alternatively, we have the new modern strips here on the right hand side. These are chromes and quantity strips, and this is part of our scheme as OpenReach to continuously upgrade our network. So we'll be seeing less of these bundles of wires lying around and more of strips like these. Moving again along through the access network, we come to the underground joint box. This is an area again where health and safety is an absolute paramount importance. Before we even go in a box like this, we would have a lid across the top here and we'd bring it back a little bit where we've just enough room for us to place our gas detection unit in. The gas detection unit would then operate in a way in which it's looking for potentially hazardous gases. Some are potentially explosive as well. Should it find any gases that could cause us harm, no further work will be carried out. On many occasions though, it's simply a case of the gas detector detects no harmful gases and work can proceed as normal. So we pull back the joint box lid and we go into the joint there and we find something like this. Now we touched upon it a little earlier regarding the health and safety. We guard off our working area to make sure the public can't intrude on that particular space and cause damage to themselves or to us. Many of these joint boxes lie in footways, so that danger is quite prominent. Alternatively, they can also lie in the carriageways, where obviously we'd have to close down the road, potentially put up some traffic lights, certainly some signing lights in the garden. So here we've got a 20 pair joint. Just to give you a little bit of context, this is just for demonstration purposes and we've only used a few lines here. In the real world, we would have probably several hundred lines, so you can imagine this would be a lot more congested. This joint is also one of the most modern joints. It's watertight for up to 30 years. Again, part of the proactive OpenReach scheme where we're upgrading our network to the most modern standards. It could be a case though, when we're out in the real world, we could be at an end user's premises and say, we'll be back in half an hour, I'm just going to connect you up in the joint box outside. When we get there, we could find a really old joint. This could be the case where we would then have to upgrade that part of the network to this standard which you see in front of you today. Now, if you can imagine that's 20 lines, that would probably take us half an hour or so to do. If we're doing lines of up of 200, you can imagine how long that could possibly take, adding delays to our job and having a knock-on effect throughout the day. So, the next part of our network, we come to the distribution point. And this is a point, again, where health and safety is really, really important. So to help me out here, I'm going to be having my safety climbing belt on, which just goes on around 2 shoulders like this, and then connects across the middle. Additionally, it connects around the waist and through the legs as well, to add extra support while we're climbing. Before we even get to this stage of climbing, we would do some pre-climb checks. We'd be looking at the labels indicated on the pole here, which would illustrate to us when the pole was last tested. It would also say who the last person was to climb it, and the yellow labels, which we can see, identify any potential hazards which people have found in the past. Additionally, we'd be looking at testing the height of all the drop wires. We'd do this with a tool called a telescopic rod, which is essentially an extendable rod which goes out up to 6 or 7 metres in height, which will allow us to measure the height of the wires which we're working on. Reason being is, we don't want any high-load vehicles to be coming past which could potentially tug on the wires which are there. Presuming that's all okay, we've done our pre-climb checks, everything's in order, we go ahead and climb the pole, and when we get to the top, we'll see a block that looks something a little bit like this. This is again some of the most modern connections that you'll find, and it's fed by this black cable which you can see going down the pole here. That's coming from the distribution side of the network, comes up the pole and is terminating these blocks. What our job as engineers to do is to connect an overhead wire to that. The overhead wire goes from the top of the pole here to the end user's premises, and we've attached the other end of that to the socket and the other end into these blocks here where our down tone will be present. Having completed that, we're then moving on to the end user's premises, so we'll be able to take off all our safety gear. We won't be needing it inside there now. So it'll be a case of placing all this back into our vans to make sure we're working tidily and safely. And then, what do we expect to find in the end user's premises? Well, we can find a variety of things. Sometimes we get an end user who's really prepared for our visit, and they will have cleared the area around the socket for us, which would be absolutely fantastic, because that would enable us to come in and work efficiently and effectively to get the job done to the highest standard possible in the quickest time scale. Sometimes though, we get end users who are a little less prepared for our visit, which could cause potential problems. It could be a case that we can't get access to the socket because it's behind the desk, bookcase, cabinets. Now in this instance it's really difficult for us because it's not a case of we won't move the stuff for them, it's a case of we can't. A, for personal injury reasons to ourselves. If we as engineers are lifting heavy equipment on our own, we could potentially pull our back out. Alternatively, it's about damage to their property. Me as an engineer, I would be held liable for any damage to their property. So if I'm lifting up a table to move it out of the way and I knock something over, whatever it is that I damage, I'm liable to pay. And I don't really want to be doing that. Finally, in preparation for our visit, it's really important that we stress the importance of putting pets away for the whole duration of our visit. This is something that as an engineer we will be doing on our ring ahead, but if we can get you guys to mention it as well, that'd be absolutely great, because the more people this information comes from, the more likely it is to be carried out. There is some cases where, particularly with dogs, we have had some severe dog bites. Quite often as engineers we're down working on sockets in quite low areas to the floor, dog type of territory, usually in pretty compromising positions, so you can see quite easily how we could get involved with the dog there in the wrong way. But it's all about working together, and by doing this with yourselves and likewise with us, hopefully we'll be able to get a good two-way sharing of information to improve the overall satisfaction for the customer throughout our visit. We really hope you've enjoyed the sessions today and got something out of it. Thanks for listening to us, and have a great day.